Hello, this is April with CraftKnifeChronicles. Welcome to the Enchanted Castle project. Now before you start watching the videos, you'll want to go to Dropbox and download the Enchanted Castle Materials and Cutting Guide. This is it sitting here in front of me. It's a free download and the link is in the description of the video below. Also in that location there are templates and the windows, which we will see here in a moment. Now the Materials and Cutting Guide has 4 pages to it. It has this picture on the front. It lists materials and tools. These are in addition to things you would normally have if you're a paper crafter, and we'll go through some of these in a moment. Then on the other pages in the guide are all of the materials and their sizes listed. It starts here. This is any color of medium weight chipboard that's a 1/16 of an inch thick, and that continues on to the next page. And don't be intimidated by this whole long list. Most of this construction is very basic. The only thing that takes a little bit of detailed cutting is when you're working around the walls and the curved towers that go attached to the walls. The rest is very basic construction, I think. Then here on the second page at the bottom, this is the third page at the bottom, calls for a section of black medium weight chipboard. Now if you don't have black available, just go ahead and use craft. The black just makes it easier when you're cutting the decorative edges on the walls, so you don't have to do as much inking, but you can definitely use craft chipboard for that as well. And then on the fourth page of the guide, the top talks about the lightweight chipboard pieces that we need, and lightweight is kind of the weight of cereal boxes, maybe slightly more. And then at the bottom there's just a section that talks about scoring and cutting for some of the decorative paper. It's mostly for the towers and yeah, I think it's mostly the towers as I look through this list. So not everything is listed here, but many of the components are, and it has the scoring as well. And as I work through the construction, you'll see me refer to this document, but as I'm working through, I'm constantly checking the measurements and maybe adding different parts, etc. So what you see on the video, if you can make out any of the sizes and stuff, it's best to refer to your printed guide and not buy anything that you might see in the video, because I try to keep it updated, but sometimes it's not totally up to date as I'm filming. So those are the 4 pages of the Materials and Cutting Guide. Next there are 2 template pages. These are in a separate PDF file in the Dropbox location. One gives the dimensions that you'll hear me refer to for cutting the second level. This is not to be used as a template. It's not exactly to scale, but it just helps you get an idea of how this is all laid out and what the measurements are, so you can have something to refer to as I'm working in the video. And then the other template page, first there's 2 arches here. These are to use only if you don't have the Tim Holtz die available, and you can cut these out and then cut around them. If you do have that die, then you won't need these templates up here. And then the rest of these over here are used for spacing windows or doors, or down here this bottom one is to space some of our decorative elements. And then the last file that's there is the castle windows and doors. You'll want to print this out using your good printing setting on your printer. and I printed on cardstock weight paper. And one thing to notice here is, you may not be able to see it here, but there are just a few of these larger windows that are totally black. Most of them have some kind of shading in them. And I don't know, it's just something that happened when I converted it to a PDF file. But there should be sufficient of the 1-inch windows, because I made a few extra, so that you won't have to worry about those totally black ones. If you find that you don't have enough, which the only reason you wouldn't is if you add more than what I use when I made it. But you could use the totally black ones as doors, because we reuse the 1-inch ones for doors as well. Now, when I made the castle, I used Graphic 45's Enchanted Forest paper collection. I used the 6x6 pad, and you can see the 12x12 pad here as well. I also used a few, I think you can see the holes here, from the decorative elements on the chipboard too. And I did on the castle use a couple of images from the 8x8 pad, but that's not really necessary. You could use them from the 12x12 pad if all you had was the 12x12 pad. There are some other items listed under materials here, but everything is pretty self-explanatory, I think, for the rest of those items. Now I'll just show you a few of the tools that I used. I used 4 different Tim Holtz dies. These are all steel rule dies, so they'll cut through chipboard with no problem. So I used 4 dies in the project. This first one is the On the Edge Torn Notebook die. Next, this is the sized arches die. I used the small and the medium size in this project. This is the sized circle. These are movers and shapers, as well as the arches were movers and shapers. I used all 3 sizes in the project. If you don't have either the circle die or the arches die, for the arches I showed you a moment ago how there's some templates in the template that you can use instead. And of course for the circles, you can cut the circles by hand, just drawing them with a circle template or a compass. And then finally, for the front gate, I used the Tim Holtz caged bird die. And in the video, if you don't have this caged bird die, I show how to make a template and to make a solid door instead of having this for the gate. Now, some of the items need some measuring down to a 1/16 of an inch. These are the 2 rulers that I use. I'm not advocating any specific brand, I'm just showing you what I use. These are made by Westcott, and they have 1/8 inch grid markings, and then they have 1/16 of an inch on the edges. If you use them for cutting, you need to be very, very careful, because they don't have a metal edge and your craft knife can cut right into that plastic. So you'll probably see me cutting with them, but it's more advisable to measure with them and then cut with a ruler or a straight edge that does have a metal edge on it. Now in the tools list, it has circle templates listed, and I have 2 sizes, and I did use them both. This larger one goes from 1 1/2 up to, I think it's 3 3/4 up here, and then this small one goes from teeny tiny up to 1 3/8. So between the 2 of them, I can go from teeny tiny to 3 3/4 without having to get out my compass. And speaking of compasses, you'll need a compass in this project. It doesn't have to be a fancy compass like this, but it needs to be one that can hold a measurement and make a good circle. and then you will need a protractor as well. It doesn't have to be this kind with a swing arm. It can be any kind that you're comfortable using. I think that's about it as far as an introduction. Look in the description below for the link to the Dropbox location and get your material and cutting guide downloaded in your templates. So now you're ready for part 1 of the construction videos for the Enchanted Castle, and I hope you enjoy making the project.